friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope everybody had a wonderful Halloween. As for me, I decorated the house for Halloween for myself and then didn't really do much else. But let's go over all of the books that I read in October. So I started the month off with not really a bang, probably the worst book I've read in a while, and that was Resist Me. I gave this 2 stars, probably more like a 1 star. I usually save my 1 stars for like really problematic books, and I guess you could probably consider this problematic. So this is a novella about the heroine, who I didn't even write her name down, Izzy, who in the beginning of the book is hooking up with this motorcycle guy. They go to a motorcycle club and she gets assaulted by the leader of the MC. And then she gets saved by James, who they had a previous hookup. He's like her brother's best friend or something. And he is also a DEA agent who is undercover in the MC. The only good thing I have to say about this is the fact that it's a novella and it's short. But if you want a story that promotes toxic masculinity and doesn't question people saying things like men who play video games are ruining our society, then this is the novella for you. But other than that, it was absolutely atrocious. So then we started the kind of just meh reads of my month. I read Prince of Air and Darkness. This is an magic romance set at a magic school, and it's between Phineas and Rake. And Rake is the Unseelie Queen's second son, and Phineas is a guy that was raised human, but he came into some magical powers, and he has been at this magical university for 6 years. I just thought this was okay. I think their relationship was cute, and I think that the world is interesting enough, but there was just some kind of like meh things about it. For one, he's been here 6 years, at the school for 6 years, and can't control any bit of his magic, which is just weird to me. It all felt really flat. Like, all the characters felt the same. There wasn't really like a distinction between Phineas and Rake. I would be in their head listening to the audiobook. I would be in their head, and I would have to try to figure out whose head I was in again. So it just felt pretty flat. Then I listened to the audiobook for Mechanic. This is about Payne and Penelope, and Penelope in the beginning of the book goes to Payne's auto parts repair place. She ends up not having a way to pay him, so she pays him by giving him her panties, and I think he rubs on her or something like that. And then the next day they see each other at Penelope's bachelor party because she is getting married to the sheriff of the town. I gave this 3 stars. It was okay. Like, it was sexy. It did have breeding kink, which I'm not really into, so that kind of made it not as great for me. But other than that, it was okay. Like, I don't have any notes for it. And then I continued the Cypress Prep series. I read the first one at the end of last month, September, and I read the second one, Never His Girl. So this is a continuation of the first one. It's the same couple, and it's about West and Blue. And in the end of the first one, West did something that it requires a little bit of groveling on his part, so he is groveling the majority of this book. I gave it 4 stars, but I will not be continuing. It is a trilogy following the same couple, and the way that the second one ended, I'm just not interested in continuing on with the series. But I do think this is a great new adult bully romance series. I love the first one. I think it's a very unique series. I'm not a fan of where it's going. Then I read Treble, which is a poly novella, and this is Rosie Adams' second newest release, and this is about Nova, Hendrix, and Sadie. And Nova and Hendrix are the pre-established marriage, and then they bring Sadie in. So Nova had met Sadie by herself, and then Hendrix had met her by himself. And Hendrix and Sadie are about to meet, and so she says, okay, like, I know you're in a poly relationship or a poly marriage. I want your wife to be there, prove to me that you're not cheating, that it actually is like an agreed upon thing. And so they show up at the restaurant, and it ends up being the same woman, and then they have a 3-way. They've never like shared a partner before, but this is their first time. This was hot as fuck. hot as fuck. Like, this was so good. And Rosie Adams, I don't think I've read a single thing by Rosie Adams that I didn't like that wasn't hot, and this was no exception. So then probably my most surprising read of the month was the X Hex. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really liked this. So this is about Reese and Vivian, and in the beginning of the book they are a couple, and then Reese ends up breaking up with Vivian because he has to go back to his fiance. So she ends up cursing him in the prologue, and so 10 years later when he comes back, the curse affects him but also the town, and they have to figure out together how to fix the issue. This was super cute. It was a fantastic read to listen to, and it just had those cute fall witchy vibes, and it just was this cute thing. It was set around a school, a university, and like it just had all of the great feelings that you would want, and it was a massive surprise for me. So then we go to a 2-star, which is No Choice But Seduction. I did not like this. I'm not going to go too in-depth in my feelings because I do talk about this in a dedicated reading vlog to all the historical romances that I read this month. I will link up in the cards above if you haven't watched it already. But this is about Boyd and Katie, and in the beginning of this, Katie was a passenger on Boyd's ship, and he is immediately attracted to her, but she says that she is married, and so he immediately kind of backs off. And then she ends up getting involved in a kidnapping situation that Boyd is kind of like in charge of, and he takes her captive to take her to the police, or like to figure out what her involvement was. And this was a very weird book because I didn't understand the tone. I don't know if this was supposed to be funny and overdramatic, or if it was supposed to be like this grandiose romance. And Katie was just the most insufferable character. She was almost too dumb to be a real person. Like, she made the stupidest decisions. She was unnecessarily hard on the hero and just over dramatic and annoying as fuck. Every slight that the hero did to her was just overblown too much. And the romance was like not even that good. They were together like all of 6 scenes in the book. I did not like it at all. So then I read such a good historical romance. I read Indigo. I gave this 4 stars. And this was one of the most beautiful historical romances I've ever read. And it's about Hester and Galen. And Hester is a freed slave who is now a member of the Underground Railroad. And one day, one of her fellow conductors brings in Galen, who is the Black Daniel. He has been injured. And so she brings him in and takes care of him, and a romance forms between them. The love that Galen had for Hester is one of the most beautiful things I have ever read in my entire life. This is a very, very, very different romance than Beverly Jenkins usually writes, I feel. I read Beverly Jenkins if I want kind of just like this quiet romance that is just I'm just there to enjoy it. I'm not really looking for like grand romances or anything like that. But this one was just this sweeping, epic, beautiful romance that I just fell in love with, and the compassion and the respect between the two of them was so beautiful. The issue that I had was I felt like once they were together, they weren't together all that much. It became more about their works in the Underground Railroad. So that was the one complaint I had. So kind of in the middle of that reading vlog, I read The Necromancer's Bride. I read this for the Brianna Hale Backlist read-along that I host, and you can check out the live show if you're interested in full in-depth thoughts. But this is basically about a heroine who, when she was young, she was on death's door, and the hero was summoned to bring her back to life, and it left this imprint on her hand that sort of bound them together. And like 15 years later, she has to go back to him because there are children in the village that are dying from the same thing that she was dying from. This was very odd, I will say. It wasn't as odd as I was expecting, but there was definitely some things in here that were not for the faint-hearted. If you don't like bugs crawling on things, if you are weary of dead hearts, maybe don't check this out, but I really like this. I give it 4 stars. I think it was just a really good novella for Halloween, and every read that I read by Brianna Hale just like reaffirms for me that she is incredibly talented. She can write quite literally any genre, any story that she wants to, and she will be successful at it. Like, she's just amazing. So then back to some historical romances. I read Cold Hearted Rake. This is the first book in the Ravenel series, and I gave this 3 stars. This is about Devin and Kathleen, and Kathleen's husband Theo, who is Devin's cousin, ends up passing away, and Devin is responsible for taking over the estate. And he fully intends on selling it until he gets to the estate and discovers Kathleen and Devin's sisters that are living there. So it's Kathleen, Theo's twin sisters, and Theo's oldest sister. And then, of course, Kathleen is his widow. And Devin is immediately enamored with Kathleen, and he just kind of wants to get under her skin, and he brings his brother West along. West is seemingly an alcoholic, but he is able to find solace and compassion in family in the Ravenel sisters, and quickly learns to love the estate. When Devin decides to keep the estate, while his brother thinks it's not a very good idea, he is still very excited about the compassion and the family that he has found. I gave this 3 stars because I didn't feel like it was anything exceptional. The romance was just kind of there. It was just kind of okay. They had, some banter and things like that, but this was definitely not her best. I will say it hyped me up very much for Marrying Winterborn, which is the second one in this series, and I have heard that this one is not the best in the series. So it's gotten me excited for the rest of the series, but this one itself just wasn't all that great. So then we have Forbidden. This is about Edie and Ryan. And Ryan ends up saving Edie from the desert after she's robbed and abandoned. And once he nurses her back to health, she begins working at a local restaurant where she finds that Ryan is white passing and he is engaged to a local Republican's daughter. But they seem to have this very intense chemistry and this pull to each other. I gave this 3 stars. Like I said, I go to Beverly Jenkins if I just want something quiet and something that I can just enjoy. And that's definitely one of these. It had an okay romance. The characters were okay. It was not what I felt like anything spectacular was. All right, so next up, I am actually going to pull this one out because I have all of the other historicals. I have the physical books, but they didn't require the energy. But I then read Wicked Intentions by Elizabeth Hoyt, which is probably my favorite historical romance that I've ever read. This was freaking fantastic. It's the first book in her Maiden Lane series. This is about Lazarus and Temperance runs an orphanage in St. Giles, which is like this poorer community where a lot of crime is going down. One night she goes into her parlor room to find Lazarus there, and he strikes up a deal with her that says, you will introduce me to the local people in your neighborhood who might know something about this murder of my mistress that I'm investigating, and in return I will introduce you to rich patrons who could fund your orphanage. I freaking loved this. The tone, the atmosphere, St. Giles is so interesting.
Okay, editing Ashley here. So somehow in transition, I lost about 20 minutes of footage. So after this clip, I'm going to put in some slides of the books that I read and what videos I talk about them in. And then we will go back to the footage where I'm talking about the horror books that I read, which is the very last video that I posted. It's only a couple of books that I missed talking about. So yeah, if you are interested, I will leave the videos after this, and then I will leave them in the description as well. Okay, bye.
So after she gets down into the caves, she realizes that the only person in the ground crew helping her is one person, and this person might not be as reliable as you would want when you are stranded underground. I gave this 2 stars. I really didn't like this. I would argue that horror is one of the most subjective genres in fiction, and this is definitely evident of that. Everybody loves this book, and it just did not work for me. The apprehension was lost a lot because like nothing was really happening. There wasn't consistently something spooky or scary happening that made me feel concerned all the time and on edge all the time. There was definitely scenes where I felt on edge, but the majority of the time I was just bored. And then the last book that I have to talk to you about is my best friend's Exorcism. This is about Abby and 3 of her friends who go to her friend's lake house, and her friend goes missing and comes back extremely traumatized, and over the course of the book, some creepy stuff starts happening. I gave this 3 stars. If you are a fan of Grady Hendrix's other works and you were questioning if you would like this, I do recommend, or if you were trying to get into horror, I would recommend this one. I think that his humorous, snarky writing is fantastic for beginners, but I just was kind of bored by this one. The actual possession doesn't take place until like 100 pages in, and then the exorcism was boring, and the manipulation and things was just kind of slow going. This is a lot of the issue that I had with The Luminous Dead as well, is like I didn't feel like enough was happening throughout for me to be properly scared, I guess. But if you have always wanted to read Jennifer's Body, this could be for you.
So the only 2 remaining books that were not talked about in videos is For Your Own Good, which I gave 3 stars, but I probably would bump down to a 2-star. And this is basically about a teacher who outwardly is Teacher of the Year, but he feels very annoyed by his entitled students, and he goes out of his way to serve justice to his coworkers and to the students that he teaches. I didn't really like this. I didn't really feel like there was enough buildup going on page to really make me feel entertained. A lot of it was like something small will happen on page 50, and then on page 150 you see the fruition of that plan behind the scenes, and it just was kind of lacking. And then the other book that I didn't talk about was this Olivia Dade one, spoiler alert, which I ended up giving 4 stars. I really like this. I like the relationship between Marcus and April. I think that they worked really well together. Their chemistry was very good. I like the fan fiction aspect. April is like a fan fiction / cosplayer for this Game of Thrones-esque show / book series, and Marcus is an actor, and he's also undercover as a fan fiction writer. And April decides that she no longer wants to hide who she is, so she posts a cosplay picture of her on Twitter, and she gets a lot of great support, but she also gets some fatphobic remarks. And Marcus, as his acting self, invites her on a date as kind of like a fuck you to the people that are being fatphobic to her, and they start up a relationship. But April does not know that Marcus is also a fanfiction writer that she has been communicating with for many, many years, and they have a very close relationship. So you have kind of that hidden identity element as well. I think that this was just a great read. Their chemistry is great. I did see some complaints that April is a prickly main character, but I think if you are someone who has been bullied or anything for the way that you look or things that you can't change about yourself, you will understand where she's coming from, and I don't think that she was unnecessarily prickly. So overall, 4 stars. I really liked it. Let's go to me doing my outro spiel.
So those are all of the books that I read in October. Let me know your thoughts down below on anything that I read or anything that you read in October that you want to gush about. I would love to know. But other than that, I will catch you guys in my next one. Thanks so much for watching, and I'm going to go put my Christmas decorations up now. See ya!